It's the best quarterback matchup in all of college football.
And it's the Big 12 rivalry that no one's talking about this week. Play our music.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome on in. Locked On College Crossover. Cam Stuart, Locked On Baylor, Darrion Gray, Locked On Horned Frogs. It is the return of the Revivalry, which is the official name that we're going with in this podcast. At least that's what I'm saying. And it's brought to you by FanDuel and part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is a make or break game for both teams. We've obviously got one of the best college football quarterback matchups we've seen in a while in this conference, which is saying something. And what does this rivalry mean? What matchups are going to decide the victory? We'll go over all that and more coming up on this Locked On College Crossover. Darrion Gray, Locked On Horned Frogs. You said it. This is the rivalry that nobody's talking about in the Big 12 this weekend. A lot of talk about BYU and Utah, but this one is still one of the most heated in all of Texas.
Yeah, man, the rivalry, the bluebonnet battle, the game between two teams trying to save their season because it's over if you lose. I think it might be over already, but it's over for sure if you lose. I don't know. Let's just call it Baylor versus TCU. I like the rivalry over everything else. I was on the Big 12 Squad show. Sorry for peeling the curtain back. I mean, technically that hasn't came out yet, but is what it is.
By the time most of us listen to it, it'll be out.
Is what it is. But no, I was on there and we got to segment 3 and I was like, Drake, isn't it crazy that we spent this entire episode talking about one rivalry game as if it isn't another one coming up this weekend? And it's crazy. But if you love Big 12 football, this is going to be really fun. This is going to be a good game. I understand it's not a top 25 matchup. Not everyone can be in that place. Unfortunately, neither the Bears nor the Horned Frogs are in that place. But this is going to be one that if you just love football and disregard the numbers next to the team, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Which is kind of what we got last year. Like, that was a lot of fun. I mean, definitely more fun for the Baylor side for sure, the walk-off field goal. But, you know, it was 2 4-4 teams, I think, at that point, and it was just vibes. Like, it was a night game. It wasn't a college football playoff spot on the line or anything. It was just 2 rivals going at it in a classic game. And we can probably expect some more of the same here. Like you said it, this is kind of a throwback Big 12 matchup. A throwback that's becoming more the norm in the Big 12 again. 2 great offenses, 2 great quarterbacks. Like, it's got the feel of what this was 10 years ago in terms of the style of play, but not with both teams being in the top 10, which is too bad. But you alluded to it here, and I talked about it on my show a little bit yesterday too, of neither of these teams are probably not going to the college football playoff, but it's still an outside shot. There's plenty on the table. There's still a shot to make the Big 12 championship game. And I think certainly TCU fans would have definitely thought that before the Kansas State game. So this really becomes like whoever wins isn't exactly the driver's seat, but is still alive, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like you're on the road, everybody's driving, you realize you need gas. Are you going to be able to make it to the gas station, right? Mm-hmm. If you lose this game, you're out of gas. It's over with. You can go ahead and declare the body cold. That's my opinion. I think 2 losses right now with the way that the Big 12 is going, it's still crazy. You can still get into contention, but I don't think that you make it. That's just my personal opinion. 3, I can say you're not making it with pretty strong conviction at that point. And I think that's the difference between 2 losses and 3 losses. And both these teams sit here at 2 losses. Baylor's had some close calls. I think Baylor could have 1 loss. They could have 3 losses, talking as far as conference goes. TCU, they definitively lost that game versus Kansas State last week. That was a large disappointing factor. And then against Arizona State, you just let them come back at the end. But I think Arizona State was just the better team, in my opinion. And the 2 things
too, we saw this same thing. Thing. Yeah.
So it's, oh yeah, you did. Yeah, that's right. You did. In my head, Baylor was trying to come back in that game, but no, Arizona came back.
It was back and forth. There was no 17-0, but it was definitely back and forth, and it came down to that final drive, 27-24 field goal at the end, like the same score, same kind of feeling of like, oh, well, maybe Arizona State's for real. And now we watch them play Utah, and we're like, well, I don't know. Just another week in the Big 12, by the way.
That's a good one because I really wonder how that game would have went with Sam Levitt. And I thought JT brought up a good point. Sam Levitt doesn't play defense. Okay, valid. I think backup quarterbacks being in the game definitely impact things, but on the defensive side, you still struggle. But this isn't the Utah show. This isn't the Big
Not
12
yet.
show either, right? The way Utah's going. But no, seriously, we talk about these close games. I also think that kind of leans into why these coaches are both on the hot seat. Because when you start to give hope, but then you take hope, it's kind of like, we can't just say automatically get rid of you. But we don't feel like we're about to ascend to the next level with you, but we could also drop off without you. And I think any quarterback or any team in the NFL that has a quarterback that is in that Kirk Cousins range knows exactly what that feeling's like. It's
Yeah.
rough. Is that unfair?
No, that's a great way to put it.
That's coaching vibes right now. I'm not going to call them Kirk Cousins coaches, but they certainly feel like, as far as coaches go, they're in that Kirk Cousins range where you feel like you could do better. You should be ascending with the things you have. But if you let go of them, you understand things get much worse. So complacency it's a battle that you have to fight. Do you go with the floor or do you try to reach for a higher ceiling? And that feels like where Baylor is, and that feels like where TCU is right now. And that's why both of the fan bases are extremely frustrated with where they stand.
Yeah, honestly, it's a good way of putting it because I thought about this weekend with Penn State and James Franklin. Now, that's a different deal. Like, I hate to say it, but Penn State's got a higher floor than both these programs, and the dude wins 10 games, but he doesn't win the big one. And so if you're Penn State and now you're losing games, and that makes it easier. But Penn State was probably thinking, like, can we do better than this? We can do better than this. And it's the same thing for Baylor and TCU. This rivalry is built on symmetry and how similar these programs are in the past, and certainly within the last 10 years or so, 15 years, they've been very, very similar. And it's the same thing. Like, Sonny Dykes comes in, first year national championship game. Dave Aranda, second year Big 12 championship, Sugar Bowl win, top 5 finish. And both, you can fairly say, have been downhill since then. Dave Aranda's worst season is worse than Sonny Dykes', but they're both been downhill with very few moments of like, there you go. That's the guy we hired. But you look at it, like, TCU's still having a good year. Baylor's won 10 of their last 13. It might be a little disappointing in how they've gotten there, but these seats have to still be both at least lukewarm, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Sarah and I, so I do a show with Sarah Smith, and you do a show, same network. So, like, we're all in the same family.
Yep,
but
yeah.
But we did a show yesterday, and we talked about how hot the seat was, and we went in terms of wing flavors. It was a really fun exercise. So it was barbecue, buffalo, mango habanero, and then the Carolina Reaper. And we discussed how hot that Dykes' seat is and how hot it should be. And one of the things that was interesting is when you implement the new AD. So there's a new athletic director that maybe doesn't have ties to the things you did before. That was one part of the conversation. Then you have Dykes' own comments on what a disappointing season would be. And this is setting up to be a disappointing season where, yes, on the surface, you may come in and be like, well, TCU only has 2 losses. They still have a chance to do this, that, and the third. And without looking at their upcoming schedule, you may say, why are they even calling for the job? There was a step up in 2024. There is a solid season in 2025. What's the hot seat? And I don't know if that's necessarily how the outsider would view Baylor, because I feel like Dave Aranda was a little bit more high profile, and I feel like the anger around Baylor has been louder, in my opinion. But TCU kind of feels like, why would you have this stance until you realize that Sonny Dykes himself says that if you're not competing for a Big 12 championship, if you're hovering around 9 wins for yet another season, it's a disappointment. So I can't say that Dykes is a complete victim of heightened expectations from fans. I would say he's also a victim of heightened expectations from himself.
I definitely understand that because it feels very similarly at Baylor. And both these teams, most years you look at 4-2, 5-2, and you're like, yeah, good season so far. Let's keep it rolling. But I think what makes this very interesting, Darrion, is that both of these teams bring back talent from last year, mainly getting the biggest check mark checked going into the season.
Indeed.
That you both bring back elite quarterbacks. And in this wide open conference, that should lead to conference championship contention. We will talk about those two quarterbacks and what it means for this matchup coming up next on this Locked On College crossover. But first, we are brought to you by our good friends over at Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. You need parts for a project? Supply House has that next day delivery. I'm talking about a real game changer right there. You can also join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use the promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com, SHCollege, and the number 5 for 5% off your first order. Supplyhouse.com, real people, real service. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. NFL season's here, nothing better. And FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. You pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Whether you're a casual fan or you love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Once more, that's FanDuel.com. Download the FanDuel app today and get started. All right, shifting our gears here to the quarterbacks. This is the sexiest topic when it comes to any football discussion, and certainly for these two teams. You want to look at who's leading the nation in passing yards and touchdowns. You're going to see this matchup, number 1 and number 2, Sawyer Robertson and Josh Hoover. Before we kind of look into the numbers a little bit more, Darrion, just tell me, it wasn't the best day for Josh Hoover against Kansas State, but this season, is he being talked about enough at the national level?
Oh man, they're gonna kill me. I think so. I really do. Right. I think that, and that's not a popular opinion amongst TCU fans, to be honest. I would say through the first 4 games, no, he wasn't. I thought that he was on fire. You look at that, or really the first 3 games versus North Carolina, Abilene Christian, and then SMU. I just didn't think that he was getting talked about enough. But one thing that's popped up in the next 3 games is I just haven't felt like he's made the pivotal plays. I just think that when you're talking about national and Heisman conversations, the game against Arizona State was crippling, and it should have been. Yeah. It honestly should have been. I think that there sometimes when you don't get the proper due in the beginning, we act like the shortcomings never happen. But on a Friday night game where everybody's watching, Hoover had 2 turnovers at the end of the game that led to Arizona State winning. And those type of things aren't forgotten. And if we're going to move with realism instead of idealism, when you're an underdog, you don't have the luxury of making those mistakes when everybody's watching and still getting the love that your fan base thinks you deserve. That doesn't mean that Hoover isn't an extremely talented quarterback. I genuinely believe he is. I think those are actually 2 separate conversations, the national attention versus just evaluating the player. And I think sometimes when asked about the national attention and I respond in this way, it may feel like a slight to Hoover, the quarterback, but it genuinely isn't. I just don't think that when the moment's been at its largest against a team like Arizona State or a team like Kansas State, he did it against Colorado, and I have to give him that. But 2 of the 3 bigger games, it's just been off. It's been too inconsistent to me, and that's why I think the national attention hasn't been there.
And with both these quarterbacks too, it's interesting in that, you know, they're both the best players on their team.
Yes.
Right. And both these teams have holes in them that aren't at quarterback. But when the quarterback's not perfect, they tend to not win. And the only 2 games that Josh Hoover's thrown 2 picks in a game this year have been the 2 TCU losses. For Baylor, Sawyer did not play that poorly against Auburn, which is a game they lost. But they turned the ball over 3 times, and the offense wasn't all that efficient in the game against Arizona State. And that led to a loss. Conversely, you needed him to be absolutely perfect against SMU to win, and that's what happened. Mm-hmm. I don't know if these two quarterbacks are obviously elite, but not really being in the Heisman conversation at all does surprise me, just because of the numbers they're putting up. But to your point, like, when you're not, I know, at this point, it's kind of beating a dead horse here, but it's like, at this point, if you're not at Alabama or playing in the SEC, you're playing in the Big Ten, you do kind of have to be perfect. If you're Travis Hunter, you have to be an elite two-way player, like the best player at your position at two different positions in order to win the Heisman Trophy from the Big 12, from a team that is not competing in the college football playoff and all that. But this quarterback matchup is good. I can't imagine that we're dealing with anything less than 30 to 35 plus points on each side.
It'd be surprising if we aren't. It doesn't. I'll say this: if both teams can protect the football and you love offense, check out this game. I think that's really the only thing that will do these teams in, is the inability to protect the football. And some of Hoover's interceptions have not been his fault. I would say the one versus SMU, Eric McAllister just kind of drops it and it falls in the defensive back's hands. There was one against Arizona State in which Jordan Dwyer just dropped the ball and it bounced up right into the defender's hands. Those are two turnovers that aren't just turnovers. Those are two in the red zone. I think they were both inside the 10. So they took points off the board. These are impactful plays. And the Arizona State game came down to the wire. That could have been a difference maker. So it's one of those things where you just got to protect the football. You got to protect your quarterback and you got to protect the football. And that's the only thing that will stop an offensive explosion.
So outside of Hoover, because obviously we know what he's capable of, it's pretty much the same thing for Sawyer Robertson. Like, both those guys can just go off for 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. Like it's nothing. They can do that in their sleep almost, some of these games. But outside of that, what is it? What is it about this TCU offense that you feel good about going against a rather lackluster Baylor defense, if we're being honest?
They have so many weapons. Like, TCU has a lot of weapons. And I know that sounds almost fanish. It almost sounds hyperbolic, but they legitimately have a lot of weapons that could pop up at any moment. And before I get into that, I do want to say there was one thing you mentioned that was great, Kim. And that's you have to be perfect at the quarterback position. And it's unfortunate because there's talent on both of these teams, but it does feel like both Robertson and Hoover have to be perfect. And what I think I apply to Hoover, and I'm sure you probably have applied it to Robertson as well, is the weight of being a great quarterback. And that comes with what sometimes feels like ticky-tack criticism. But the fact is, you have to be perfect. And in the moments where you make a mistake, you don't have many to give out. So I think sometimes it's like, man, why are you so hard on Hoover? Because he's supposed to be great. And these are the things that happen with great quarterbacks in these pivotal moments. These are things we talk about. But overall, great quarterbacks. I want to say great guy, because that sounds like bad quarterback, good guy. No,
he's a great game manager. Yeah, it's like
great guy.
Thing. It's implied. Yeah,
he threw an interception, but great guy. You know what I'm saying? The things he does in the locker room. No, I'm not doing that. He is a great guy, but he's also a great quarterback. And he has some great weapons. He has a guy like Kevorian Barnes, who I think is a really good running back. They don't block well enough to run the ball off enough, and they also don't run the ball enough to run well enough. But Kevorian Barnes is a good running back. I think that Jeremy Payne is a good running back. He's a good receiver out of the backfield. Trent Battle, he shows up well. Those latter two do a good job getting on the outside. Barnes will punch you in the mouth. And then as far as the receivers go, Eric McAllister is really good. Jordan Dwyer has shown us something. I don't know where he's been the last month of action, but he showed us something earlier. Joseph Manjack, as long as his health is right, he's typically been reliable. And Ed Small has popped up as a freshman who's worked his way into the lineup due to injuries, and he's been pretty consistent. He was actually the receiver who had the most receptions in last week's game. But it's a lot of weapons on this team, and I think that you could relate. There's a specific running back that I think TCU fans are hoping to not see much of in 2025 that's wearing green. But you guys got some weapons too.
Absolutely. I mean, both these offenses are loaded, and this could be a nice little bounce back day for both the running backs. That will definitely be highlighted in our matchups of the game. Let's go over that next on this Locked On College crossover after a word from our friends at Mazda.
Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda, and Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride because when you're getting from point A to point B, you trust that you're going to get there safely. The car has IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards that outdoes everybody else in the competition, from footwork to breath work. Athletes sweat all the details, and Mazda does the same. That's how you're elite, right? So Mazda brings that same intention to how we craft every model. You can feel it. From the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to the available Napa leather upholstery, you can make sure that your everyday drives feel like anything but. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, impossible feels irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved.
You said it before the break there. This is an opportunity for Bryson Washington to kind of get back. That's someone that TCU doesn't really want to see after the 4-touchdown performance last year. He's playing a little banged up, and I think he can be a big part of this offense still. There's been a little bit more on his plate with Dawson Pendergrass being out before the start of the season, and I don't want to say Baylor didn't have depth. They do have depth, but it was young guys. You know, you've seen Caden Knighton as a true freshman taking some carries. You've seen Michael Turner start to get in the groove the last couple of games. He's a redshirt freshman. But looking at the TCU side, this has been a couple of years now of not being able to run the football effectively. You're going up against the 13th ranked rush defense in the Big 12 in Baylor. We kind of saw the flip side of this last year when TCU not only couldn't run, but couldn't stop the run. And so it was actually a pretty pedestrian day for Sawyer Robertson in this game last year when they scored 37 points because they kept it on the ground a ton in that Saturday night matchup. Do you expect Kendall Briles to maybe take some weight off the right arm of Josh Hoover and see this as a game where we can start to establish the run?
I think he has to. And I think that there's two reasons, right? There's two reasons that I think Kendall Briles needs to take a little bit of pressure off of Josh Hoover. A, we've seen you're having to do it all with Hoover's arm. That's never a recipe for success. I think that's just basic football. You don't want to be a one-dimensional team. And then two, well, you play a little bit of defense while you're on the offensive side of the ball. Let's keep the ball away from Sawyer. Let's keep the ball away from Baylor, and let's try to work. You said it. Baylor has the 13th ranked run defense in the Big 12. All right, cool. We've established that. You have a talented, really trio of running backs. You have quite a bit, but we're going to break it down to those top three. You have a talented group, and you showed the ability to run the football better last week. You didn't do it often because you ended up playing catch up. Yep. But how about you just take the ball away from away from Sawyer? Let's take the ball and have a nice 5-6 minute drive. These are things that allow your defense to catch their breath. You're not getting into many 3-and-outs in that situation if you do it right. And you're just keeping the ball away from a high-profile offense, right? Like, yeah, we can feel how you want to feel. Hoover versus Sawyer, it doesn't matter. We both know that both of these quarterbacks can go light up our defenses. And we don't want that. So keep the ball out of the opposing quarterback's hands.
And we did see that. It was a long time ago at this point, week 1. Auburn did that. Their most effective defense they played against Baylor was their offense and keeping it on the ground and rushing for 6 yards a carry the whole night. But just keeping Sawyer Robertson off the field. So that there is a blueprint of like, hey, you don't even need to turn them over because they didn't in that game. You don't even really need to stop them more than once or twice. And they held Baylor to 24 points in that game because they had the ball the whole game. And I think that has been a bit of a struggle for TCU really, again, the last season and a half going on now with Kendall Briles obviously been there for 2.5 seasons at this point, but running the ball has certainly been a struggle. Are there any other matchups from Baylor's offensive side of things that has caught your attention for this game?
Yeah, Frank Trigg. The tight end matchup, most tight end yards or most yards by a tight end in the country. I don't know what this linebacking duo is going to do with him, right? I like Obi Izor. I like Caleb Elarms, or I like both of these guys a lot. But this feels like a test that we just haven't seen a lot of. They're great coming downhill. They've had to deal with some crossers and things of that nature. But if they have to go up against Frank Trigg, is it going to be like it was against Kansas State?
That's going to be tough. Michael Trigg, he's an absolute.
I think Frank Trigg might be a former MMA fighter.
Michael Trigg could be that soon.
Frank Trigg. That's why Frank Trigg is he's the MMA fighter who looks like Kurt Angle. So I'm an MMA guy, and my brain just kept going. And we said, Michael said, what did he say? I was like, man, I should hear him. But yeah, see now if he goes for 200 yards, everybody can say should have called him Michael.
Yeah, that in fact, I'll be sending that to Michael Trigg just to motivate him a little bit more. He'll just get another Sports City #1 play. Yeah. But I mean, he is someone that is Baylor's best mismatch. Like Sawyer Robertson's Baylor's best player. Josh Cameron is their best receiver. They've got some dudes kind of on both sides of the ball, interestingly enough, for a team that doesn't have very good defense. But Michael Trigg is the one constant that no team has been able to game plan against. No one's been able to cover him. And this is a lofty comparison. I'm not trying to say they're a like-for-like player, but they really utilize him the way the Patriots used to use Gronk, in that you can put him in the slot, you can put him outside. He's not as good a blocker as Gronk or anything like that, but it becomes that mismatch nightmare where a safety or a corner, a nickel corner, is not big enough. They can't bump and run with him. And the linebackers they can bump with him, but they can't run with him. And so you're running those seams down the post, and if it's not open, you've got him double covered. And Kobe Prentice, we've seen this like 5 or 6 times already this year. I think he's got 17 catches and 6 touchdowns. He just was running wide open down the post, and it becomes a layup, like an absolute easy layup. And I think Michael Trigg has to be seen as the biggest weapon that Baylor has. And certainly there's no shortage of weapons on the TCU side. Eric McAllister, I mean, just the leading receiver in the Big 12, no big deal. I'm wondering if Baylor could cover him. I really am. Tevin Williams has had a good year. He's been injured a lot of his career. He's having a good bounce back year. And maybe I'm being too harsh because they faced 2 elite receivers this year. Actually 3, but 2 of them were on the same team. Cam Coleman for Auburn went up against Tevin Williams. Darrion had 1 catch for 23 yards.
You take that.
And they went up against Jordan Tyson, who we both know is a pretty damn good receiver in this conference. And they kept him quiet. Mostly Tevin Williams kept him quiet for about 55 minutes of a game. Now they didn't the last 5 minutes and they lost, but like that's
that happened to us too.
Like
happened to us too. Good day. Yeah, all right, Twins.
Again, the symmetry between these two teams, like it's all the way there. So they're every hole that either of these two teams have, I think the other team can attack, and that's why I struggle to think it's going to be anything less than like 38-35. Like, and whenever that happens, those games end up becoming like 20-13. But I really feel like there's just no way that this isn't in the 30s or the 40s for both sides.
Yeah, I'm agree. I'm going to agree. Unless both of these teams are able to just force a lot of turnovers, I think it's going to be a really close, high-scoring game. I got TCU pulling it out. I think TCU's biggest enemy in 2025 has been hostility. I don't think that they've been able to handle hostile environments, and homecoming is a very emotional environment, but your homecoming should not be hostile. If Baylor comes in and takes over homecoming, we're going to have a lot of conversations about job security. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It's going to go from just being your team every day to your job every day, because that's what we're going to be discussing when it comes to Sonny Dykes. So I do expect this to be a good environment for TCU, and I think they're going to pull out a close one because the fanfare is on their side. And I think that that's going to be something that really works in their favor. More specifically, the fanfare won't be against them. And I think that's going to be the thing that's the difference maker.
That's big. And whenever we've both seen it, when there's a coach even on a lukewarm seat, sometimes that fanfare can get against you, even in your home stadium. Certainly Baylor has seen that. That is for sure. I like Baylor coming off a bye week, though. I really do. I like that they're rested. I don't like the fact that, TCU's coming off a game that ends up being a blowout, but they should not have lost. Like, that was a lapse of focus. They weren't ready to play kind of game. I don't think that Kansas State's on a good roll, but I don't think they're a better team than TCU at this point in the season. I like Baylor, though, coming off the bye week, getting rested, getting healthy, which they've really needed, and being able to look over this tape for 2 weeks. So wouldn't you know, you pick TCU, I pick Baylor. We'd love to hear from the fans, though. We want to see some score predictions down in the comment section below, and then do us a favor, like, subscribe, find us wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube 5 days a week. It's Cam Stuart of Locked On Baylor, Darrion Gray from Locked On Horned Frogs. We will see you on the next one on your favorite show, whichever one of us it is, on the Locked On Podcast Network. This has been the Locked On College Crossover.